All right, good afternoon, everyone. We will start in roughly 5 minutes. Just want to give everybody a chance to get in the lobby, but we will be with you soon. Good afternoon, everyone. We apologize for the slight delay and the slide sorter view of our PowerPoint this afternoon, but we are moving forward even with technical difficulties. My name is Jill Nogaris, and I am the English coordinator here at the Virginia Department of Education, and we are pleased to have you join us for our afternoon webinar in our comprehensive literacy webinar series on using Understand scoring for use with the end of course local performance assessments to verify credits in writing. We are working today in collaboration with our partners in the Office of Student Assessment, and we have Holly Cook who will be monitoring the chat should you have questions as we go through. And I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Ringley, who will walk you through the process here. And again, we apologize for the view of the webinar, but we hope you are able to follow along with our slides anyway.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you everyone for joining us today. That view will give you an idea of how much longer it is, so that might be a good thing. About our webinar today, well, no, I can't. All right, about the webinar today, as Jill said, during the webinar, please use the chat feature and submit your questions to all panelists. And for anyone interested in taking a look at this presentation again or sharing it with your colleagues, the slides and a one-page summary and the recorded webinar itself will be emailed to those who've registered and be posted on the Comprehensive Literacy Webinar Series webpage soon. That page also contains the previous webinars and those that will follow. An overview of today's session. We're going to look at what is Understand scoring, how to access it, using Understand scoring, and then what is coming next in writing. If you've joined us today because you've never heard of Understand scoring, this slide provides you with the brief definition and history. It was originally created to provide additional information about scoring, the short paper component of the grade 5, grade 8, and end of course writing standards of learning assessments. Most likely you are aware of the guidelines and the availability of using local performance assessment to verify credits in writing. To support school divisions that have chosen to verify credits in this way, a new tab was added in fall 2019 and provides information about administering and scoring the local performance assessment. First, we will walk through accessing Understand scoring. If you've already created an account, please stay with us as we later will move to important information about using the application. But first, we're going to discuss how to get there. So first, you want to follow the link provided on the Virginia Department of Education's website. If you navigate to the SOL English page, it's going to be underneath that table that has the standards of learning and other materials. At the bottom, you'll find the section for local performance assessments to verify credits in writing, and you'll see the arrow there pointing to the link for Understand scoring. This slide is going to show you what that page looks like. It's a login page, and if you already have an account, you're going to click sign up. But if you have not created an account yet, you're going to need to click the sign up button. So log in if you have an account and sign up if you do not yet. Users may access Understand scoring as a guest, but work will not be saved, and verification sets for qualifying scores will not be available. And we will discuss verification sets later on in the presentation. If you are creating an account for the first time, you will need a keyword. That keyword is available in the implementation support document that's available on our website. And once you are in the application, you are going to want to click on the local high school button. You will see the available buttons. We have one for grade 5, grade 8, and end of course. That's for the SOL writing test, but the local high school button is going to be specific to the performance assessment. So in this, on the local high school page, you're going to have materials available, the rubrics that are used for scoring, annotated anchor papers that illustrate each score point of each domain. You're also going to have practice sets to provide Virginia educators the experience with scoring papers written by Virginia students, and annotations for each practice set to provide explanations. This is after educators have practiced scoring. Those will appear. And finally, verification sets used to qualify readers and to ensure that scores assigned are consistent with performance expectations established by the scoring rubrics. So now we will move on to using Understand Scoring. Knowing how to use Understand and Scoring is important because a scorer must first train and then qualify with Virginia materials in order to be a scorer for this local performance assessment. These prospective scorers should also be familiar with the 2017 English Standards of Learning, the guidelines for the use of local performance assessments to verify credits in writing, and any additional support documents to ensure that they have a clear understanding of the local performance assessment requirements and suggestions. Before attempting the practice sets, and especially the verification sets that are available in Understand Scoring, scorers should read and understand all information in the local high school tab, the scoring rubric for the composing written expression domain, and then each of those anchor papers and annotations, and the scoring rubric for the usage and mechanics domain, and each of the usage and mechanics anchor papers and annotations. The Learn About Scoring section contains a lot of information and may help answer questions you or other educators have about scoring student writing samples that will be included in a body of evidence. The Critical Information section is going to contain critical information, and it provides a closer look at some details related to administering and scoring the local performance assessment. One of the most important but potentially most difficult distinctions between classroom writing and the writing that is included in a body of evidence is that papers for the local performance assessment are scored. They are not graded. So in the critical information section, you have a link to focused holistic scoring, and papers for the local performance assessment are scored. They are not graded. So what is this? As teachers of writing, we may have ideas of what good writing looks like and what it should contain, but in focused holistic scoring, we have to evaluate the writing proficiency based on specific elements or domains of writing. Each of these domains need to be scored holistically and independently of the other, and the score needs to reflect the reader's overall impression according to the rubric's features. So it's not a checklist of things that you find within a paper. It's an overall impression. The score is going to weigh the student's relative strengths or weaknesses and then assign a score point for each domain that most accurately describes the attributes of the paper. As an example, a paper assigned a score of 3 in composing and written expression might have some characteristics of a 2-level paper, and it might have some characteristics of a 4-level paper, but overall, its 3-level characteristics predominate. So you'll see this picture is an example of a paper from composing and written expression. It has the overlay, and you'll see the boxes where it's highlighted in purple where it has attempted to address counterclaims, and there's some blue highlighting for drawing reasonable conclusions, and we see in yellow where it contains varied sentences but some imprecise language is present. In the assessment office, we've received many questions that revolve around tips and tricks that educators may have developed and adopted to increase student writing scores, but in reality, student writing is evaluated based on features of the rubric only. So for example, should a writing sample lose a point if there is no counterclaim? The answer to that is no. The rubric mentions including counterclaims when appropriate, and that's only one feature of the composing and written expression rubric. So a lack of a counterclaim may not cause the overall impression of a student's control of that domain to fall by an entire score point. Another question, what if the paper does not have 5 paragraphs? Should it lose a point? The answer is no. The score should reflect the reader's overall impression based on the rubric, and the rubric does not mention a formulaic writing style. For further examples, what if a student includes exactly one set of quotation marks and one question mark and one exclamation point, regardless of the appropriate use of these punctuation marks? The rubric does not mention tallying a variety of punctuation marks to award a higher score. It would have to be used effectively and purposefully for that to matter towards a student's score. What if there is a thesis statement at the end of the introductory paragraph? Should the writing sample gain a point if you can easily locate the thesis statement at the end of that paragraph? No. The score should reflect the reader's overall impression based on the rubric, and the rubric, again, does not mention or support a formulaic writing style. It's important to talk about preferences versus rubrics when you're training scorers, when you're training to become a scorer yourself. Papers must be scored holistically, not graded. An educator's classroom preferences and rules for writing, if not included in the Virginia writing rubrics, are not features to score for the local high school assessment. For example, part of the composing written expression rubric says, contains specific word choice and descriptive language and purposeful information, enhancing the writer's voice and creating a tone appropriate for the intended audience. What this does not say is no second person pronouns. So as a teacher of writing, I may assign a writing task, and the student may not use second person pronouns, and I would be able to grade that accordingly. But for this particular purpose, if a student has used second person pronouns and it does not detract from a tone appropriate for the intended audience, then this is not something that should affect the student's score. In focused holistic scoring, we will have a range of papers, and it's important for local scorers to understand the criteria used in assigning a score and not to expect that papers at a certain score point will always look the same or have the same attributes. Papers receiving the same score point may look very different from each other. That's why the anchor sets and practice sets are so important. It's just like if you think about an A paper may be a 100 or a 91, and those papers may look pretty different from one another. In scoring, we have the same thing. There's going to be a lower, middle, and upper end of a score point 4, 3, 2, and 1. How are rubrics used to score papers? Scores for the end of course writing assessment must use rubrics in conjunction with anchor papers to appropriately assign scores to student writing samples. And that's because generally rubrics for writing assessments are fairly generic and only provide the general description of a score point. It's the anchor papers that provide examples of student writing that illustrate the rubric descriptions. It's only in conjunction with anchor papers that the criteria at each score point of the rubric begin to be clarified. Educators using understand scoring to train and qualify to score student writing samples should become familiar with and continuously revisit the anchor paper sets for composing written expression and usage and mechanics. Those are available in Understand Scoring. That tab is next to the Learn About Scoring tab. Each of our anchor papers is accompanied by an annotation that describes how a paper meets the expectation outlined in the rubric for the specific score point. These annotations were developed using feedback from Virginia teachers and other educators serving on the 2012 or the 2019 range finding committees. A note about range finding in writing. It involves a committee of Virginia educators with experience in teaching and scoring student writing. These committee members review and discuss writing rubrics and any previous anchor papers. Then they will read and assign scores to new writing samples completed by Virginia students. And after that, they're going to evaluate the scored papers, looking at all the threes. Is this a high 3, a medium 3, a low 3, etc., and trying to find papers on the line between score points to firmly establish what is a 3 and what is a 2. While viewing each anchor paper, educators have the option of selecting the annotation and a highlighted overlay. This example shows the annotation and overlay for composing and written expression. You'll see the overlay on top, the colorful highlighting, and then the annotation that's at the bottom to explain in more depth why the paper received a score point. For anyone interested in using the print option, it is available for all anchor papers and practice papers if you'd like to have a hard copy of those while scoring student writing samples. After your training, prospective scorers should independently score the papers within the 4 available practice sets. For each practice set, you're going to assign 1 score for composing, written expression, and 1 score for usage and mechanics. So while the anchor papers were separated by the 2 domains, once you get to the practice sets, you'll be scoring those papers in each domain. After all papers in 1 practice set have been scored, results will be shown in the Scoring Summary tab. And scorers might use the results of their practice to adjust. Scorers might use these results to adjust their practice as necessary. This page shows the scoring summary. You have a column for the paper set, the status, the 2 domains, exact score, adjacent, non-adjacent, high adjacent, low adjacent, pass, and has it been reset. So the exact column shows the percentage of scores assigned that match the practice scores, actual scores exactly. And the adjacent column shows the percentage of scores assigned that were within 1 score point of the practice paper's actual score. In this example, the adjacent scores are mostly high, so this scorer would probably want to review the practice set annotations for practice set 1 to gain a better understanding of why each score point was assigned, and then also review the anchor sets and annotations again with these results in mind before attempting the next practice set. A note about adjacent and non-adjacent scores. Adjacent scores, again, are within 1 point of each other. For a practice set paper with a score point of 3 in usage and mechanics, a low adjacent score would be a 2, and a high adjacent score would be a 4. Non-adjacent scores are more than 1 point off. For a practice set paper with a score point 3 in usage and mechanics, a non-adjacent score would be a 1. After a practice set is submitted, a prospective scorer may then again select the set from the drop-down menu to review the assigned scores and annotations. So you've gone to the scoring summary, but if you want to see the assigned scores and you want to see the annotation, you have to go back to the drop-down menu and select that practice set again, and then you'll see this information there. After you've reviewed the practice sets and annotations, the anchor sets and annotations, and you're ready for verification scoring, you must be logged in to Understand Scoring to view these sets. And you must use these sets to qualify for scoring student writing samples for the local performance assessment. Scores must have a 70% or better exact agreement with the actual scores on each domain in one of the verification sets to pass. So there are 2 verification sets available, and you need 70% or better exact agreement in one. Exact agreement, again, means the scores match. Adjacent scores do not count as exact agreement. However, scores having 10% or more non-adjacent scores in more than one domain will not qualify for scoring student writing samples. Scores must qualify through Understand Scoring annually, and they should have a dated certificate from Understand Scoring displaying their verification set results. And it's recommended that these certificates are maintained locally in one location as part of your documentation for the local verified credit plan. Verification sets may be reset. However, this information is recorded and displayed on the scoring summary tab. So that information will be recorded if you need to reset your verification sets. It is best practice that all papers are read by 2 readers, with the student's score for each domain being the total of the score assigned by both readers. Division should establish protocols for resolving non-adjacent scores. And it is recommended that a third qualified scorer rescore the domain on which the scores are non-adjacent, with the highest 2 of the 3 scores accepted. If a division chooses to calculate a student's total score, composing and written expression is counted twice, and then usage and mechanics is counted once. So composing and written expression is 2/3 of the total score, and usage and mechanics is 1/3. However, it's important to note that individual student writing samples do not pass or fail the local performance assessment. They are included in a body of evidence that later will be evaluated for verified credit. Because of this, there is no numerical score that correlates to a passing or failing score for an individual writing sample. Division should think about and develop a scoring protocol that includes how to resolve non-adjacent scores, when and how often training and qualifying will occur, when and how often calibration of scorers will occur, when and how often writing tasks will be scored using the high school writing scoring rubrics. But it is best practice to incorporate quality control activities throughout the scoring window, to train and qualify scorers at a time near the scoring window, and to include a way to requalify and or recalibrate scores immediately before scoring student samples or during an extended scoring window. We wanted to explain some more uses for Understand Scoring outside of qualifying scores for the local performance assessment. Information in this website may be helpful to anyone who's producing, teaching, or scoring high school writing, regardless of the method used by the division to verify credits. Staff and students in divisions verifying credits through the end of course SOL writing test would still benefit from using the anchor papers, rubrics, and annotations available via the EOC test button. Those are going to be aligned with the end of course writing test. In addition to using Understand Scoring to train and qualify scorers of local performance assessment, educators may also use examples and annotations to help identify strengths and weaknesses in students' writing and make a plan for how students may improve their writing, and also share exemplars with students during instruction to enhance students' understanding of how the rubrics will be applied to their writing. So things have changed for end of course writing. One thing that has not changed is for grade 8 at this time, there have been no changes to the grade 8 writing SOL test blueprint or items. The grade 8 writing SOL test at this point continues to be a required Virginia assessment, and the grade 8 training materials remain available for Virginia educators. The grade 8 writing test continues to be aligned with the 2010 English SOL, and all those materials and understand scoring are going to help those teachers and writers in grade 8. For an in-depth look at the information within understand scoring, including rubrics, domains, explanations of score points, and more, please also see the secondary writing presentation from the 2019 Deeper Learning Conferences. These and additional resources for divisions using performance assessment to verify credits in writing are available on the English SOL page of the VDOE website, including some instructional plans that may help divisions and teachers as they prepare students for the local performance assessment and deliver instruction to lead them up to that point. So what is coming next in writing? For grade 5, the Virginia Department of Education will host range finding for grade 5 in April 2020. And then materials specific to the SOL test will be replaced with information specific to performance assessment. However, grade 5 training materials for the writing SOL test that are aligned to the 2010 English SOL remain available until this update occurs. For end of course, additional information will be provided for using performance level descriptors aligned to the 2017 English SOL to evaluate bodies of evidence used to award a verified credit. And school divisions will be notified when this information becomes available. We hope that you will stay connected with us. This slide shows the contact information for the Office of Student Assessment and also Jill Noguera.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon. We will be posting these materials on our YouTube channel along with the PowerPoint presentation and a one-page summary for use in your divisions, and we hope to get those accessible and posted soon. If you have the opportunity to join us next week, we will be working and collaborating with our colleagues in the Office of Student Support and Special Education to provide some professional development on collaborative teaching and co-teaching in the English classroom. And then looking beyond that, we will be exploring more with interdisciplinary content area, disciplinary literacy, using PALS assessments in the K-2 classrooms, and then also exploring support for English language learners in the English classroom. So if you have the opportunity to join us, we would love to see you. You can use the same link that you used today to register, and we hope to connect with you in the future. Again, that is our contact information. Please feel free to use it whenever you need us. We are happy to support. Thanks again for spending time with us this afternoon, and make sure that you share this information with a colleague near you. Thank you.